Hello and welcome to the channel Neville Goddard. This is the book Power of Awareness by Neville Goddard. Power of Awareness, Chapter 2, Consciousness. It is only by a change of consciousness, by actually changing your concept of yourself, that you can build more stately mansions. The manifestation of higher and higher concepts. By manifesting is meant experiencing the results of these concepts in your world. It is of a vital importance to understand clearly just what consciousness is. The reason lies in the fact that consciousness is the one and only reality. It is the first and only cause substance of the phenomena of life. Nothing has existence for man save through the consciousness he has of it. Therefore, it is to consciousness you must turn, for it is the only foundation on which the phenomena of life can be explained. If we accept the idea of a first cause, it will follow that the evolution of that cause could never result in anything foreign to itself. That is, if the first cause substance is light, all its evolutions, fruits and manifestations will remain light. The first cause substance being consciousness, all its evolutions, fruits, and phenomena must remain consciousness. All that could be observed would be a higher or lower form or variation of the same thing. In other words, if your consciousness is the only reality, it must also be the only substance. Consequently, what appears to you as circumstances, conditions, and even material objects are really only the products of your own consciousness. Nature, then, as a thing or a complex of things external to your mind, must be rejected. You and your environment cannot be regarded as existing separately. You and your world are one. Therefore, you must turn from the objective appearance of things to the subjective center of things, that is your consciousness, if you truly desire to know the cause of the phenomena of life and how to use this knowledge to realize your fondest dreams. In the midst of the apparent contradictions, antagonisms, and contrasts of your life, there is only one principle at work, only your consciousness operating. Difference does not consist in variety of substance, but in variety of arrangement of the same cause substance, that is your consciousness. The world moves with the motiveless necessity. By this is mean that it has no motive of its own, but is under the necessity of manifesting your concept, that the arrangement of your mind, and your mind is always arranged in the image of all you believe and consent to as true. The rich man, poor man, beggar man, or the thief are not different minds, but different arrangements of the same mind, in the same sense that a piece of steel, when magnetized, differs not in the substance from its demagnetized state, but in the arrangement and order of its molecules. A single electron revolving in a specific orbit constitutes the unit of magnetism. When a piece of steel or anything else is demagnetized, the revolving electrons have not stopped. Therefore, the magnetism has not gone out of existence. There is only a rearrangement of the particles so that they produce no outside or perceptible effect. When particles are arranged at random, mixed up in all directions, the substance is said to be demagnetized, but when particles are marshaled in ranks so that a number of them face in one direction, the substance is a magnet. Magnetism is not generated, it is displayed. Health, wealth, beauty, and genius are not created. They are only manifested by the arrangement of your mind. That is, by your concept of yourself, and your concept of yourself is all that you accept and consent to as true. What you consent to can only be discovered by an uncritical observation of your reactions to life. Your reactions reveal where you live psychologically, and where you live psychologically determines how you live here in the outer visible world. The importance of this in your daily life shall be immediately apparent. The basic nature of the primal cause is consciousness. Therefore, the ultimate substance of all things is consciousness. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe and let me know in the comments what you think about this video. See you in another video.
I'm telling you that if you dare to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, knowing who is doing it, it's God doing it. For God is your own wonderful human imagination, and He is doing it. If you dare to assume it and you walk in the assumption that it is so, ignoring the senses, ignoring the facts of life that deny it, in a way you do not know, it will become a reality in your world. So these are the realities out of which we fashion our world. Take a man who is drafted. I was drafted in 1942 at the age of 38. Not quite 38, but going on 38. Like millions of us, I dare say they all felt as I did, but they didn't know this principle. I knew I didn't want any part of it. Nevertheless, I was drafted. I didn't resist it. They sent me off to Camp Polk, Louisiana. And after 3 months in boot training, I decided I would do something about it by applying this principle. I asked, first of all, for an honorable discharge, because there was a regulation that came down from Washington that if a man was over 38 before March the 1st of 1943, he was eligible. It didn't say it was automatic. If his commanding officer felt that he needed him in his company, that decision was final with the commanding officer. You could not appeal it to any higher position. You couldn't take it to the general. So whatever your commanding officer was, and he was a colonel, if he decided he needed you in his battalion, you remain. Well, I applied based upon the fact that I was eligible, for I was 38 before March the 1st of 1943. And it came back to me disapproved and signed by my commanding officer. All right? That seems final. But there is nothing final in this world if you know who God is. If you know that your own wonderful human imagination is God, you do not accept anything on the outside that is in conflict with your wonderful desire. So I desired to be honorably discharged out of the army and doing the work I'm doing now, for I did it before. I want to return to that work. So that night, here was a paper that I received that day, disapproved and signed Colonel Theodore Bilbo Jr. His father was Senator Bilbo of Mississippi. As I retired in my barracks with all these men around me, I assumed I was in my own apartment in New York City. I knew it well. I left a wife and a little girl only a few months old when I was drafted. My son volunteered, and he was with the Marines in Guadalcanal. And they picked me up, and I was drafted, and my little girl was born the end of June of that year, so she was only a few months. And I had a wife and a little girl, and so I imagine I am home. My wife is in that bed, I'm in this bed, and my little girl is over there in the crib. And then I simply assume I am walking through the apartment. It was a nice 7-room apartment. And I walked from room to room and touched the objects, and they all seemed so familiar. And I looked through the window and I saw Washington Square. And I looked to my right and I saw 6th Avenue. And then, having gone all through the place, I simply returned to my bed and settled in it all in my imagination. But I gave it the tones of reality. I gave it sensory vividness. I made it so real that it seemed to me I'm actually in my apartment in New York City. But I made quite sure I was not there on furlough. I was there because I was honorably discharged. No furlough, not going back. Well, 4 o'clock in the morning, before my eyes came a sheet of paper It looked like the sheet that I got from the colonel, where it was disapproved. And as I looked at it, a hand came out from here to the hand and held a pen. And it scratched out the word disapproved. And it wrote boldly in script, approved. And then the voice said to me, that which I have done, I have done. Do nothing. I woke, and all the boys had sung to sleep. I remained because I couldn't break their sleep. I remained until that very moment when I could go down and shave and clean before anyone else did, which I did. And this thing is permeating my entire brain, what happened to me that night. For 9 days, I did nothing. On the 9th day, the same colonel called me in. And after a long chat with me, he said, go back to your commanding officer, captain, and tell him to sign another application. And so I went back. I had done nothing in the interval. And he signed another application. I went back to the colonel, and the colonel approved it. And that very day, I was on a train from Camp Polk, Louisiana, to New York City, honorably discharged. To this day, none of them knew or know what I did. I did it all in my imagination. I believed that what I did was fact. I believed that my imaginal act creates facts, and therefore I actually lived in my apartment, and I was not any longer a soldier. I was a civilian, but I was honorably discharged from the army, not dishonorably. And in 9 days, it was fulfilled. I can multiply that story by hundreds if one will actually do it, for we are the operant power. Instead of doing strange things and getting wrong with the government and fighting for your objectives, you don't fight at all. The voice said to me, that which I have done, I have done. Do nothing. Well, where was that voice? Within me. That very voice that I heard coming from without was whispering from within me. The voice that said to Moses, I am. That is who I am. And he heard us coming from without what is being whispered from within. For are we not told in Scripture that we are the temple of the living God, and the Spirit of God dwells in us? And God is Spirit. Well, if the Spirit of God dwells in us, then how could I hear it from another? He is coming from within myself. And so I heard it. When I could not get any passage, I did the same thing when I seemingly was locked in an island for months to come because there was no ships coming. I did the same thing. I remember what I did in the army to get out. I did it when I was in an island and could not get out. And there are a long, long list waiting, and they called me and gave me passage for my wife and my little girl and myself. And yet there were thousands waiting all through the Indies to get out, and only 2 little ships servicing the entire group of islands. And I simply got out. It doesn't matter how. I did it normally. I didn't kill anyone. I didn't bribe anyone. I didn't pull any strings. I simply applied this principle. If I actually got passage, would I sail? Yes. Well, then I assumed that I'm on a ship. And looking back nostalgically at the little island, leaving behind me my friends and my relatives, and taking with me my wife and my daughter. And I look back, and it seemed so normal and so natural. I gave it tones of reality. I could feel the salt of the sea on the rail as I held the rail of the ship. I could smell the rawness of the ocean, and I could see the island. And then, within a matter of 24 hours after I did it, I got a call from the Alcor Steamship Company to come on down and see them. I went down, and they said, we have a passage for you. There are only 2 beds, but the little girl can sleep with her mother, and you can sleep up. And so there were 2 bunks. And it's a lovely ship, small, only carrying 60-odd passengers, but I sailed and came back on time as I was committed to go to Milwaukee the 1st of May. And I got there in time. So I ask everyone to believe in God. But God is not something on the outside of you. God is your own wonderful human imagination. If you have any other God, you have a false God. Therefore, do not feed him anything but loving thoughts. Nothing but loving thoughts. Always exercise your imagination lovingly on behalf of everyone in this world. It doesn't cost you anything, and it doesn't hurt anyone. And you will find yourself becoming the man that you want to be, the lady that you want to be. And you'll move from stage to stage to stage without hurting anyone and fulfilling all of your dreams. Then you'll know how true the statement is. That all things are possible to him who believes. Because with God, all things are possible. And you'll find God. You'll find him in yourself as your own wonderful human imagination. That is God. As stated so clearly in Scripture. He's called in Scripture the potter. And the word potter means imagination. So I go down to the potter's house to see how he does it. And he was working at his instrument. And there he was at a field making something out of clay. But what he had, the vessel he had in his hand, was spoiled. And he reworked it into another vessel, as it seemed good to him to do. He didn't destroy it. He didn't discard it. He reworked it into another vessel. So you don't discard anyone. You rework him. See him as you would like to be seen by the world. See him in a more noble light. So you rework him in your own imagination and believe in what you've done. And he will conform to it. So you don't discard anyone as something that cannot be remedied or cannot be made right in this world. You make him right in your own mind's eye. For the potter is your own wonderful human imagination. And any vessel you hold, whether it be a man or yourself, see that it is lovely, that you are actually the man that you want to be, that those round about you, they are what they would like to be, and have a nice vivid imagination of it, a clear idea of what you really want in this world, and a determinate vision of things as they ought to be, and have them all fixed in your own mind's eye, and believe it. Then in a way that no one knows, they will all come to pass.
I trust that you will find tonight's message a very practical one. Because today, there are so many reading the paper and believing what they see and what they hear on radio and TV, with the depression and the recession and this, that, and the other. Now tonight, let me tell you who you are. We are told in Scripture, this is the 19th chapter, the 26th verse of Matthew. With God, all things are possible. Then we are told in the earliest gospel, the book of Mark, the 9th chapter, the 23rd verse. All things are possible to him who believes. Divine imagining has no restrictions placed upon it. Human imagining has one restriction placed upon it: to believe. All things are possible to him who believes. So they equate man, he's speaking of you, with God. But on this level, it is believing. Can you believe it? There is no other limitation other than man's capacity to believe what he has imagined. All things are possible to him who believes. So the only restriction placed upon man is his ability to believe what his reason, what his senses deny. That's all. No other restriction. Now I'll turn to the 115th Psalm. And here, I think the whole vast world has been guilty of this. The psalmist claims, our God is in the heavens. Their idols are made. First of all, our God is in the heavens, and He does what He pleases. No matter what it is, He does what He pleases. Their idols are made with human hands of silver and gold. They have voices, but they speak not. Or rather, they have mouths, but they speak not. And eyes that do not see. They have ears that do not hear. And they have hands that do not feel. And feet that do not walk. And there is no sound from their throats. Those who make them are like them. And those who believe in them are like them. To believe in anything outside of yourself as the cause of the phenomena of life, you're believing in something made with the human hand. I don't care what you call it. Now, who is this God who does as He pleases? That is equated with man. Well, you try to think of anything other than your own wonderful human imagination. Our God is in the heavens, and we are told that heaven is within you in the 17th chapter of the book of Luke. That God is within you. If He is within me, what in me does anything that it pleases? Nothing but my imagination. I can imagine anything in the world. The most incredible thing I can imagine. But as man, one condition is imposed upon me. I must believe it. If I can persuade myself of the reality of that which I have imagined, no power in the world can stop it from coming to pass. Man creates his objective world out of imagination and faith. These are the substances out of which he actually projects and objectifies his world. There is nothing but God, and God is man's own wonderful human imagination. Man is all imagination, and God is man, and exists in us, and we in Him. The eternal body of man is the imagination, and that is God Himself. So divine imagining, yes, it's instantaneous, but when it's keyed low into the human form, then there is one condition imposed upon it. Can I believe it? So I now come to the point of faith. What is faith? Faith is the subjective appropriation of the objective hope. So I have a hope. I would like to be this, that, or the other in this world. Or I would like someone, a friend of mine, to be this, that, or the other. Now I must appropriate it subjectively. I go down in my imagination and I simply conceive a scene which would imply that it's true. And I appropriate it. How do I appropriate a scene? I create a scene which would imply that it is true. Bringing the individual or friends before me, and I can have friends tell me, have you heard the good news? And I will act as though I didn't know what is the good news. Have you heard the news about, and they mention my friend, and I listen eagerly to what they're telling me about my friend. I'm appropriating subjectively my objective hope. All I have to do then is to persist in that state. As Shakespeare said in his Antony and Cleopatra, it hath been taught us from the primal state that that which is was wished until it were. But he used the pronoun he. But you can use it of anything in this world. But he said that he which, wishing the being to come into being. But you can wish it for a home, a place, or anything in the world. You need not confine it to a friend. That he which is was wished until he were. You can make it or there or anything else in the world. It's simply from the very beginning. The primal wish was simply to so give myself to a state that I lost myself in the state and I remain in that state until the state became objectified within my world. This is what the Bible is teaching everyone in this world.